Okay, welcome everybody to the channel. We have a very special guest today, Braden Ream, the CEO of Voiceflow. I've been going back and forth, with Braden and the team, trying to get this interview because I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the space right now that people are dying to hear my thoughts on. But more importantly, I thought I'd get it from the horse's mouth as someone who's leading a company in the space and something that myself and my community use heavily is to get Braden on here and give his thoughts on what happened with the Assistance API, the GPTs update, and how this affects the space moving forward. So, Braden, firstly, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on the channel, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, excited to be here. It's been a crazy couple of months, and so it'll be a lot of fun to chat about all that today.
Awesome. Well, we'll just jump straight into it and go roll back what two and a bit weeks now. The GPTs update rolled out, the Dev Day announcements, all hell broke loose. It seemed. What's your take on the recent updates? And I think specifically, if we can start with the trend towards autonomous agents and instead of human input, we're going seem to AI is leading us a little bit more towards a future where it's not necessarily human input, but more sort of agent to agent communication. Where do you think voice flow fits into this kind of industry and space moving forward?
Totally. So I think before I even talk about voice flow, I'll talk a little bit about sort of the history of assistance because I think it plays into this nicely. So when we got into this space in like 2018, 2019, it was Alexa that was all the rage. That was sort of the big dominant consumer assistant. And I don't think a lot of people paid attention to how Alexa was trying to build their ecosystem, but what they were trying to build is Alexa skills. And Alexa skills were essentially third-party apps that you could build on top of Alexa. And what was really interesting is Alexa, in the same way that OpenAI and GPTs now is trying to connect these different third-party apps, had the same thing, skills connections. And they really laid out the model for having a consumer assistant that would be like an Alexa. That is essentially a browser for the internet of assistants out there, the internet of agents.
Mm.
And what's interesting is over time, you would interact with your consumer assistant who could then access, the business assistant, right? So maybe I wanted to book a hotel with Expedia or something like that. Today, you would go through Alexa, and again, I'm using Alexa, but you could, swap in ChatGPT or really any assistant. You could talk to ChatGPT, then talk to Alexa and book a hotel, or sorry, talk to Expedia, book a hotel. What really starts to become interesting is that's just one task. Like, let's say you want to go to Paris or something. You need a hotel, you need flights, you need like a bunch of different services.
Mhm.
When can these agents and assistants start to do compound tasks? When they can start to decide what do I need in order to actually fulfill this entire journey? And I think that's where um, Alexa Skills was trying to go, and that's now where sort of the successor with GPTs is now really heading in that direction. And even plugins earlier this year,
Yeah, it looked
seems
like
like
that was going to be it, right?
yeah, totally. I mean, we had a lot of this similar conversations when plugins came out
Mhm.
earlier this year that we're now having about GPTs. And it's just really cool because we're now moving towards this sort of internet of agents. And I think you're going to see essentially every business will have an agent and every consumer will have a consumer assistant that they trust. Right.
Mhm.
And so I think over time, you're going to start to see um, people are going to choose, maybe they use Alexa as their shopping focused agent. Maybe it's Siri, which is going to be their privacy focused agent. Maybe it's going to be ChatGPT, which is, the all encompassing super smart agent. And it'll be really interesting as you start to have these consumer agents that then interface with the business agents. So I think that's, if we go at the highest level, that's sort of the macro. Um, when it comes to some of the announcements that came out with the GPTs, my opinion is that OpenAI is trying to build the best models. They're trying to get to AGI. And in order to do that, you need the best data. And so what they've done is they're trying to turn a model advantage that I think this year, what we've seen is like the model advantages are more fleeting than we initially thought. Like
Mhm.
companies are catching up within months, right? And so they're launching these models and then now they're trying to turn that short-lived model advantage into like a distribution advantage that can then lead to better data. So they launched GPTs, which allows you to do these like specialized use cases on top, which then allows them to get a distribution moat because now like ChatGPT is becoming useful not just for the model but for the application layer on top of it.
Mhm.
And also it's giving them way better specialized data because now it's not just ChatGPT that's like very broad. The conversation is not labeled. It's very specifically, a lead gen GPT. It's very specifically an accounting GPT. So that data is better than for them to be able to use because it's more filtered, right? The better quality data, the better quality models you get. And so the way that we view it is OpenAI's goal is to get better data to eventually get the AGI to build, to build better models. And this is just a great way to create a distribution moat to make sure that they continue to get more data, that ChatGPT continues to be the place that we all interact with. And that the GPTs give them higher quality, more sort of fine tuned data. Now, how do you do that? Imagine OpenAI for a second. You have to create tools that make it easy for people to actually kickstart that process. And I don't know if we want to go too deep here, but every
We can go deep.
yeah, so every product follows this like fundamental law, which is you can either be easy or powerful. And the reason why that is because every feature you add, like for all the chatbot builders sort of watching, every time you add an additional widget or button or some sort of capability, it makes the chatbot more powerful, but it also makes it a little bit harder to use, right? The easiest chatbot would be something that is just button driven, right? Really simple, 2 or 3 flows. It doesn't do much, but it's bulletproof. Same thing with product design. So we think about this at Voiceflow a lot. Every button we add gets more and more powerful, right? Every feature, every whatever we add. The problem is as you do that, it becomes way more complex and hard to use. And so, like, let's take website builders, for example. Do you want to be Wix or do you want to be Webflow or WordPress? They all fall on
Mhm.
this like spectrum of easy to use to hard to use. Hard to use typically skews to more value. It's a more powerful platform, typically like mid-market, enterprise, really, skilled agencies who then service those larger customers or skilled agencies who service maybe an SMB base that wants more than just like a Wix website.
Mhm.
So when we think about what OpenAI wants to do, they want data, right, to build the best models. So they're going to build tools that enable the widest audience of people, which means the tools are going to be pretty simple. Um, I think over time, as they need to get better data, they might make the tools more complex, but they risk if they make the tools too complex, they risk sort of having the broadest top of funnel, right? Because if you make a builder so easy that everyone can build a GPT, yes,
Mhm.
the builder might not be very happy, but OpenAI's goal is not to be a tool builder. They're not making money from the tools. They're making money from the consumption, and they're making money from having the best models. That's $1 trillion market. They don't
Yeah.
care about the tool market, which is much smaller. And so the tools are just there as a way to facilitate the outcome. But ultimately, I think the like sort of the power and complexity, they're going to leave to third party tools like a Voiceflow, for example, um, because we're just going after a smaller market in terms of the number of people out there, higher value, more complex bots and things like that. But their market's way bigger, and they're just trying to get the data. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how we think about it. It comes at it from a couple different lenses there.
Yeah.
Um, Hopefully it
I'm
wasn't too
I'm I'm glad you said that because I've literally it's so good to hear it from another person, especially someone in your position, because someone was in my comment section and said, like, what's the I don't know if there was a couple of different ones. One was, why wouldn't what's the point in building on these platforms anymore? Wouldn't OpenAI just roll out this own feature for themselves? And aren't they one step away from creating a chatbot builder themselves and all this kind of stuff? And my take was exactly that, which is that's the pennies game. They're in the big money is in the foundational models and in the building the APIs that everything runs on. For them,
totally.
if you think put yourself in the position of Sam Altman or whoever or now Sam Altman again, but would you be bending down to pick up the relative pennies in the market, which are still massive markets, but relative to the foundational models side of things? It's just not if you had limited resources, you wouldn't be allocating it to, oh, but there's a little bit of money there if we make a Instagram, WhatsApp, and Telegram deployer straight out of our like it just doesn't make sense for them. They can focus on what they're good at rather than getting their hands tangled into it. And I'm sure as soon as you get into interfaces and things like this, it's just a completely different ball game. So if they could stick to their back end work, their APIs, I'm sure that's where they'd much rather be sitting.
I mean, they're a $90 billion company. Voiceful is a $100 million company. And like, they're growing like bananas. And if we actually take this down to the tangible, Voiceflow is not easy to use, right? Like relative to how easy it could be, right?
Yeah.
You come in, we could strip out a ton of the complexity, but then you lose a lot of that power.
Mhm.
So if they were to build what Voiceflow has, they can, for example, they could do some of the business logic stuff for sure and some of the integrations. But then you start to alienate the audience. And then what's interesting is then other third party tools that make it easier will pop up. Right.
Mhm.
And so they have to think about, do they want to be the biggest, widest, most mass market, or do they want to be the biggest, most complex? And I think, so Voiceflow has what Anthropic models, OpenAI models, and we've got other models coming.
Mhm.
Um, they're still getting data and consumption from supporting third-party tools, and so we've got a great partnership with them. Where, all right, maybe not a formal partnership, we got a good relationship, I should say. And we're still bringing them great big enterprises who are now using Voiceflow's more complex tools and feeding that data through to OpenAI. So they kind of win both markets by exposing these APIs, but then enabling people who can't use the more complex, more powerful tools with really easy, simple tools. They actually kind of capture both sides of the market.
Mm. Yeah, and I think the interface side of the whole equation is a very interesting one, and it's one that you guys have made a bit of a pivot recently on, away from necessarily having WhatsApp and these different deployments down to just the voice and the chat deployments essentially. So, what
Yeah,
is your thoughts on the future of interfaces and this big question mark that is in the sort of software 3.0 stack, as I believe what some people call it? Where do you see the interface going for AI based applications, and how is VoiceFlow tailoring its strategy? If you want to go into strategy, but how we can expect you guys to play this moving forward?
totally. I mean, there's so much innovation. Like, I think the interfaces is there's going to be so much change over the next year on the interface side that our approach was actually to pull back and just focus on what we're really good at, which is the building experience, and then expose an API and allow others to build their own interface. So we have our web chat widget, which is essentially the one channel that we're going to natively support really, really well. And then everything else is going to be done through an API. And the reason for this is we had customers coming say, hey, I'm doing an automated drive through and I need like a face, right? Can you guys build an interface for that? I'm doing a SMS integration with this provider. I'm doing WhatsApp. I'm doing I'm doing all these different interfaces, especially the custom interfaces. There was a lot of those. And we started to realize that um, we're not going to be the company to build out those interfaces. We've got 200,000 users now. Like, how do we enable our users to be able to build interfaces for each other to make it really easy to build their own interfaces, customize these interfaces? Because I think, um, a really interesting trend I've seen is you go to a website and, when the web chat widget first launched as sort of like a paradigm, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, um, the bots were not very powerful, and so you would, use the website, then you use the widget for a little bit, then you go back to the website. The bots are now getting so good that we've seen where like you click on the widget and it just goes full screen because there's no point in even using the website
Yeah.
anymore. And it starts to get you thinking, like, what are what's the interface even going to look like? Like, are websites obsolete now as a paradigm? Because like I'm not even using the website; I'm just using the
Mhm.
chatbot. And so you start to think, well, hold up, like if the chatbot can start to give, more detailed responses, will when you land on a website page in future, is it just going to be a chatbot and it will serve you the website elements as needed, right? And as you
Mhm.
have a conversation with this website. And so I think like that kind of interface innovation is going to be so fast and rapid that like we're going to let the community figure out how they want to do that and then just try to support it as best we can. So that's sort of the approach right now. And then in future, you can expect us to add more what we would call like direct channel integrations again. So
Mhm.
whether that's Instagram or WhatsApp, but we just really want to focus on like enabling the community to innovate right now. And then over time, I think we'll start to add more and more like native channel integrations.
Mhm. It's funny you mentioned that as well because I was having a chat with my template team on in the accelerator and had the same conversation. I was just like racking my brain, like where does the interface go? Like how does this where does this all lead and what does the interface of the future look like and how we interact with these assistants? And Avi, one of our developers in there, he was saying, "Man, like I think the the interface becomes chat in many ways, and it does, like you were saying, make the website in many aspects obsolete because with the ability to call functions throughout it, as we saw with the Dev Day demo, is that being able to converse with the assistant and be able to do things that you'd normally have to do by clicking around. It's as I've said in prior videos, it's the end of this point and click websites, and it's sort of transforming over to a conversational based interface. But I think it's also important and a good an important reframe to make for people who are working in the space is that chatbots in the way that we know them have a basic and sort of mundane and dull sound to them in many
Yeah.
ways. But yet we have it is literally the interface of the future, at least before we get to the voice side of things. And I think it's been difficult pill for some people to swallow. It's something that I've been kind of having to push uphill along my journey. Is that people say, "Oh, but they wouldn't pay that for a chatbot. It's just a chatbot. It's just a this." And based on conversations like this, it becomes clear that we need to reframe it a little bit as to how we look at chatbots. It's not just a chatbot. It's a the new way of interacting with technology in many ways. So I'm glad to hear you've got the same thoughts on that. It is very exciting, the thought of we've even considered to put it on our, on my accelerator website where it's, okay, you come on, instead of having to read through the whole page, people have questions that come to their mind as soon as they get to the page. Instead of having to
Yeah,
make them pick through the entire website to try and find it, why not just ask the question? And we can give you the answer, and we can serve you up resources and links and everything that you need. And I think
totally.
the assistance API has been a big step towards that with the knowledge base component and the tools. So,
I love the idea of reframing what a chatbot is.
mhm,
This is something when we were raising money for VoiceFlow, we had the same thing from investors. You
mhm,
know, who cares about chatbots? And, the way that we frame this to folks is, you know, when you think about a chatbot, you just think about like the chat bubbles. But it's so much more than that. If you roll it back and you start to think about every single interaction that you have with a customer is a part of a conversation. So when I'm on Netflix and I'm trying to choose a movie to watch, and I've been scrolling for 2 minutes now. That's me, like, in the most abstract way saying, hey, Netflix, I can't find what I want. Can you jump in here and suggest something?
mhm.
Right? Like that was an implicit act in a conversation. Netflix then jumps in. Over time, I need to add another subscription. I need to, chat with them over text. Like all the different channels, all the different interfaces, all the different both implicit and explicit actions start to blend to chatbots essentially being like the CRM, like the relationship operating system between the customer and your business.
It's a
And
channel.
yeah, and like I think when people start to frame it that way, that it is the chat bubbles is the interface that people think about when people think that the interface is the product, but the product is the agent. The product is like that behind the scenes tracking
Mhm,
all different interactions with all your customers, and done really well, it can be just an awesome experience. Like what if ever had it where you call an IVR and like a contact center, and it already knows it already knows what you're calling about. Because it looked up your number, it saw who you are as a customer, it saw that you purchased something last week. Like when you have experiences like that, where again it feels like wow, like this is not just some call center bot. There's some intelligence behind the scenes. Like they have an
mhm,
agent there. That's when like the experiences get really magical. People need to start thinking about disambiguating the interface that you see and the behind the scenes logic that is the operating system between how your business interacts with customers.
mhm, for sure. I'm very big on this data side of things. I think the conversational a conversation as a channel via whatever deployments you want to use. Something special about being able to pull information out of those conversations because you get to see into the customer's world and life in a way that you don't really get to when they're just interacting with your website because they don't think that those conversations are being monitored. Like it's not on top of mind when you're asking something to a web chat widget about a product or about you're not thinking that this is going to be dug over and analyzed over time for information. And especially when it comes down to those more personal ones where it's not so much just customer support, but it's actually like how can I help you? And it's getting very personal with it and feedback as well. There's so much to be mined out of this. And I was looking up good conversational data. You might know something like this, but like industrial scale or like business scale conversational data analytics that you can plug into something like these assistants. Now, as you're pumping out all these threads, there needs to be a way. I've just done a video on the channel covering how you can export these threads and then analyze them using Airtable and Make. It's nothing too fancy, but there's
Totally.
going to be a massive need for okay, I've got all these threads that have just been created over the past week. Where can I plug them in and get some insights out of it? So, do you know if there's any conversational data analytics platforms out there, or what do you guys use internally for that? If you're allowed to say.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some features in VoiceFlow that aren't publicly available that do stuff like this, and I'll show you after the recording. Um, but I think a lot of people when they think about chatbots, again, they're thinking on like the very first level, which is like I see the chat bubbles and I see it just for one particular use case. Like let's take lead gen, but
Mhm,
I think what gets really interesting, and I think this is for a lot of the agency owners, the very first step when you start working with a client, and we're trying to do this more rigorously ourselves as well, is let's analyze the data that you have. Let's analyze the transcript data. Like, where is the opportunity for automation? Because you might think it's lead gen, but it might be some internal task automation, right? And so, for example, we were chatting with a company the other day where they had a bunch of, I think they have like 600 cold call agents. And what they need was lead enrichment. And that was it. Like they just needed to be able to say, hey, I'm going to call this person, run it through a chatbot that says, hey, I just pulled up all their data,
Mhm.
here's like the best way to approach this cold call
Yeah.
script.
And
That's
you
a
multiply
very
that by 600 and then like
nice people.
50 calls a day, like 100 calls a day.
Totally,
Massive.
and factor in the time of day, factor in any potential holidays, like, and you start to realize that for that, it's a very bespoke use case, right? Lead gen is what I would consider a very high volume, high impact use case.
Mhm.
But where there's a lot of opportunity is there's 1,000 small little use cases at most businesses. Like, we've use cases that only exist at VoiceFlow, right? Things that only we uniquely need. And how can we work with companies to start automating not just like the core pillars? Everyone knows customer
Mhm.
support. Everyone knows customer experience. How can we start automating a lot of those bespoke, um, like mid volume, low volume use cases that have high impact, right? So like we're starting to think a lot about this now as VoiceO not just being a way to automate customer support, but it's like customer support's just the beginning. Once you're in, once you've landed with a customer, how do you then automate everything else, right? And
Mhm.
really think about like that AI automation piece, which is why like I love sort of where yourself and others like are taking the space. Because that's totally what it is. It's AI automation, but everyone's focused on the same use cases. There's so
Mhm.
many long tail use cases that provide a ton of value. And I think folks aren't necessarily thinking about it that way.
Yeah, I think that that comes down to me quite a bit. I think I do try to, at least in most of my content, make it as beginner friendly as possible. And it does, in order to attack those niche use cases and the business specific ones, that gets a bit closer to a custom solution. And in my experience, you need a fairly deep and broad skill set as well in order to be able to piece together a solution for that. So that includes like the automation platforms, the chatbot builders, the backend sort of more complex knowledge based functionality that you need. So
Totally.
I feel like the pillars are a good point for people to get into, like a customer support, lead gen, all these kind of areas where it's easy and they understand it. And there's places you can get templates, like I've put lead generation templates and these kind of things out that are fairly easily attackable. But that is definitely the destination that we want to get a lot of the agency owners in the community to, which is being able to come in there and take a full sort of head to toe look at the business and identify those combination of high impact and low cost to deliver as well. So it's ideally, it's not ridiculously hard for you to build at the same time, which is that sweet spot between valuable yet, not too hard to deliver.
Totally, right? Like it's and we think about this the exact same way. We have pillar use cases like, our sales and marketing team very focused on customer support, customer experience automation, in-app co-pilots, like, sort of like the pillar use cases that people know about. But what we're starting to do with our larger customers is say, hey, um, if you're comfortable with it, give us your call transcript data and let's see. You can do methods like utterance clustering. Let's look at the 10,000 utterances and let's cluster them into groups. And you might realize, hey, there's actually this whole group of automation that's not even being touched, right? Let's start looking at internal opportunities, internal conversations, um, like conversational analytics. It's going to be a really big area for sure. Like
Mhm.
now that you can kind of automate everything, like if you look at the history of chatbots over the past, like, 10 years since some of these, kind of came onto the scene in 2014, um, chatbots were so expensive to build before LLMs that customer support was the only use case that even made sense from an ROI standpoint. That was it. It was like big companies had maybe their own custom teams. Like we work with a lot of big companies who, they spend, you can go find some reports online. $100 million building their chatbot is it was a very big bank in America. That was how much they spend.
Yeah, what
Uh,
can you
it's like,
send them my way next time they come around?
so
I'm sure we can deliver something there.
well,
I'll give them a discount.
it's crazy. So you see like a price tag like that. I can tell you, like from working with some of these teams, there's hundreds of people, like hundreds, building these bots, and a lot of them are built on the NLU paradigm where that was what was required. Now with large language models, you can have a 2 to 3 person agency stand something up that's like pretty comparable. And that's what's now leading to this explosion of like SMBs, mid markets being like, hey, like I don't need to have $100 million budget to put together an assistant. I can now do this with a very small team. And
Mhm.
that's what's been really exciting because it's now unlocking all these other use cases as well, where again, customer support was the only thing that had an ROI that made sense. Now it's like, hold up, if I can actually enable that, 600 person call group and it's not going to cost me $1 million to put that bot together. That ROI is now actually worth it. I'm going to go do it.
Mm,
And so I think we're just seeing like, and I think it's like the AI automation is blown up. We're just seeing like the proliferation of people realizing that the ROI statement that we've all been used to for the past 10 years has completely flipped. Everything is now, for the most part, like ROI positive as long as you have the right tools and skill set.
sure. I think it'd be good to also discuss what you see to be as the sort of the tech stack moving forward and how VoiceFlow fits into that. And yes, we have the Assistance API, which is going to be running a lot of things. We have some token costs that I want to talk to you about in a second about, and
Yeah.
the sort of usability of that in its current state. But there's things like the Assistance API, there's VoiceFlow, and there's obviously the major component of this, which is tooling. How do you see that sort of ecosystem tying together, and how people can play into that and build sort of solutions using your software?
Yeah. So how we think about voice flow is largely as an orchestration framework. And so, how do you orchestrate multiple different models, multiple different GPTs? We're of the belief that if you want to build complex, multi-turn agents that are, reliably able to automate not just knowledge but tasks, right? Because we
Mm,
sort of at VoiceFlow, the internal framework we use is there's knowledge automation. That's like your knowledge based Q&A, like that's sort of that kind of stuff. And then there's the task automation. How do we actually do refunds? Tickets.
yeah,
Collect emails, like that kind of stuff.
integrations.
Yeah, essentially integration heavy stuff. Um, we're very focused on, okay, cool. You're gonna have GPTs, which are gonna do a lot of the knowledge automation. I think over time they'll get into some of the simple integrations. Do we think OpenAI is going to be the only player in this space? No. So how do we be like the model agnostic orchestration framework that's really collaborative, really powerful, can scale all the way up from like a really advanced agency all the way to the world's largest companies. We have a bunch of features coming for scale soon. Um,
Mhm,
and that's how we're thinking about ourselves. Agnostic, all about orchestrating the different components. Because we don't think that, for example, let's say someone builds an awesome GPT to do, function A. That's great. Have that like orchestrate with VoiceFlow. We've been showing off a lot of those types of capabilities recently. And even as the GPTs start to talk to each other, we think that the ecosystem is going to be large enough where it'll never just be fully contained with OpenAI. And if it is, that's totally cool. At the end of the
mm,
day, we're just going to help customers build the best experiences. But we believe in a world that's going to be multi-model. So there's going to be a lot of different models out there. You're going to want to keep some of your integrations not just entirely within OpenAI. You might want to have a third-party integrations framework, which is actually maybe hosted on a private cloud or whatever it might be. And so that's kind of how we're thinking about VoiceFlow from the long run. Scalability, extensibility, and then ultimately just trying to be agnostic to all the underlying models.
yeah, I think we're on the same page there. We've just started work on our I'll probably have a chat to you and Daniel about it a bit more and to get your thoughts on it, but we are sort of rolling out our model agnostic platform that's gonna help people to a lot of the agency owners to hook into platforms like VoiceFlow. And so it's sort
Yeah,
of a little intermediary step between, OpenAI and VoiceFlow that's gonna allow people to connect into it very easily, and I'm super
that's
excited to
cool.
get more information on about that. But the, I think we've seen with this OpenAI episode, which turned our lives upside down, I'm sure. Well, it did for me. I can only imagine for you with the company you have on your hands, how much this past week must have felt. But the need for diversification away from one model provider has been really highlighted here for the past couple of days until Sam Altman announced the return. I
Yeah,
was thinking, okay, does this mean we've got if they're reallocating all their resources to be a research company again, this means the
yeah,
assistance API is not going to get the development it needs. It's still too slow. It's still too expensive in many ways. They haven't done memory management, etc. There's so much that needs to be done there, but it was so promising. It was really concerning. Like, are we going to have to sit and twiddle our thumbs here for 6 months until another company picks up the slack? But
yeah,
thankfully, we've now got them back on the scene. However that's going to play out. But Anthropic coming in with Claude 2.1 with tools, I think, is a very good sign for what is to come and allowing us to be not too reliant on just one provider. So, you said you have allowed and Claude support recently.
yeah. Yes. We've got Anthropic support, all the OpenAI models. Actually, I think we haven't launched Turbo just yet, but for GPT-4. But yeah, Anthropic, OpenAI, and then we've got plans to add a lot more models as well as custom models as well. Because we
Mhm,
work with some big enterprises where they're just building their own stuff, their own large language models.
mhm.
And I think also with all the open source large language models coming out now, I think it's more likely than not that you have OpenAI remain kind of like the dominant closed source player. And
Mhm,
then you're going to have just a slew, especially on the big company side, of like open source models, because it allows you to control your data. You don't have to worry about cloud outages and things. It's all in your cloud. It'll be really interesting to see how much it fragments.
mhm. Yeah, I think tooling is gonna be for agency owners and people looking to make money in the spaces to sort of ride the back of this stuff that's coming out. What is your thoughts on tooling and the importance of knowing how to build them moving on? Because I feel like that out of the what I call like three ingredients out of these GPTs and assistants, you're prompting, knowledge, and tooling.
Yeah,
Any idiot can do the first two, but being able to create custom tools that are powerful and specialized to a certain use case or adapted to a business, I see as what's going to be the biggest value add for someone who's looking to get into the space to make money. How do you see the tool creation environment continuing to develop and the importance of it moving forward?
totally. I actually want to answer this from a different angle and then I'll come back. What I want to address is, maybe a month ago, there was, I saw a whole bunch of videos. It was like, AI model, it's dead, right? All this kind of stuff. I haven't made money. Um, and I'll tie it back and why this is relevant in a sec. But I thought it was such like a ridiculous thing for this reason of think about how many like SMBs have websites. Think about how many SMBs, like and all of these SMBs cannot use, or it's really difficult to use AI today. And so the way I view it is there's going to be a massive services layer in the middle. I mean, look at how Deloitte and all these like large consultancies are pushing into AI. They're setting up practices, they're hiring, chief AI officers and all this kind of stuff. It's because if you do not have the skill set to stand stuff up, that's the services layer in the middle, right? And so how we think about it is Voiceflow focus on building the best tools. You're going to have all these SMBs, mid markets out there who do not have internal resources, and it does not make sense for them to learn, how to use Voiceflow. We use a website contractor because we don't have the time to learn to use Webflow to the degree we need,
Yeah.
right? It just doesn't make sense to hire a full time person.
Convenience.
That
Convenience
totally,
and expertise, you'll pay for it every time.
totally. And so, I just think about how big the market is going to be for automating things with AI and all the SMBs that will not have the skill set to do it. And it's just like, okay, it's very clear there's going to be a large services layer in the middle. Like that's just like, it feels, you look at the website market and I think AI is going to be more impactful than websites, because I think we're talking about not only the replacement of the interface, which we've already kind of talked about, but also the replacement of a lot of internal tasks. So it's like the
Mhm.
RPA market and the interface market had like this, this
Love cloud.
yeah, exactly. I'm trying to find a good word, but yes. And so anyways, I'm extremely bullish for that reason of like it just makes all the sense in the world. So then going back to how are good people going to make money? I think people are going to make money setting up agencies. And I think when people think about agencies, I mean, you've got a ton of great resources on this, but like choosing a use case for sure, like building up an expertise and then over time branching out to tangential use cases.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Because I think customers and SMBs don't search for AI automation agency. They search for lead gen automation. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They search for the use case. You just happen to
Mhm.
be the model. And so I
Yeah.
think some people have got that, kind of backwards, thinking that people are searching for the agency name.
Yeah.
Oh, they're
No
searching.
no one outside the space knows what an AI automation agency is. No,
Oh,
there's like no business owner is searching that up.
totally. Like we don't, we're not trying to optimize SEO for like, like collaborative chatbot builder.
Yeah.
We're doing like customer support automation because people are searching
Mhm.
for the use case that the tool solves for. And so that's sort of the first thing. So agencies with use cases. Then I think you're going to have tools, sort of like middlewares, like a VoiceFlow, where, we're enabling the agencies, we're enabling the businesses themselves. And there's going to be a ton of tools that are going to essentially choose back to, earlier in our conversation, there's that spectrum of products. Are you the easiest or are you the most powerful?
Mhm.
And I think in every single layer of that stack, whether it's like, Voiceflow, if you boil it down, is essentially conversation logic and integrations builder, right?
Mhm.
Um, there's going to be a really easy to use tool and there's going to be a really powerful tool. We're very focused on being like the most powerful, like for the people who want to build the best agents,
Mhm.
that's what we want to be. So there's for that spectrum, you're going to have conversational analytics, as you mentioned. There's going to be actual analytics, there's going to be conversation insights, which is like analyzing the conversations, like pulling out unique insights and things. Then I think
Mhm.
performance analytics will be another one
Yeah.
Content management will be another one. Obviously, the RAG solutions and knowledge bases is going to be another one. Like
Yeah.
all these different tool categories. Um, and then I think last there's this emerging category, which is people who are now building tools to serve uh, other tool makers. And so here's what I mean by this. VoiceFlow today, we offer a standard chat widget. It's decent. We open sourced it so that people can customize it. And then one of our community members saw that, VoiceFlow's got 200,000 users now. And they said, hey, um, we can just build a better widget. And we love it because we get to focus on our core tools. And now they've launched a service called
Same as
VoiceFlow.
OpenAI, right? They
Totally.
want to just focus on the stuff you're good at.
Yeah, exactly. Like VoiceFlow's never going to build incredible like bot analytics. Like I can tell everyone now, this is just not on a roadmap because the reason why is, there's just tons of other analytics platforms that are going to do it better than us. Like
Mhm.
there's Mixpanel, there's all these BI tools that have been around for 10 years. And we don't even use our own analytics at VoiceFlow. We actually pipe it into Mixpanel because it's a far better BI dashboard. So our approach at VoiceFlow is, hey, we're going to build the best possible agent creation tool. And then we're going to expose APIs to allow you to pipe the data out to all these other tools that are going to be best in class for what they do. Right.
Mhm.
So we had this user who said, I'm actually going to build a third-party tool called VoiceGlow, and it's going to be a chat widget customization tool. And now they're making money selling that to VoiceGlow users.
Mhm.
And so you kind of have this.
200,000 of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. And there's another one, Chat Dash, which is they're building an analytics dashboard specifically for AI automation agencies building on top of VoiceFlow because they realize that
Mhm.
VoiceFlow has this, quirk, which is the workspaces. If you have a VoiceFlow account and you want to have your clients only see their bots analytics, you can't do that in VoiceFlow today. That's just
Mm.
we service like JP Morgan and these big companies where that's not a need for them.
Yeah.
And so they use their APIs and they built their own analytics dashboard specific to agency owners that allows you to segment by customer, give their customer their own login and
Whoa.
that's really cool. And so I think there's like kind of these three categories. You can either be the AI automation agency yourself, you can build a tool and try to find a layer in the stack. Or now there's this like meta tools category, which is you can try to fill the gaps that the larger tools have. Like, we've raised like $40 million now. It might be a bit tough to compete in our,
Yeah.
specifically with us, but like, can you layer on top and build a really nice like SaaS business by selling into an existing customer base?
Mhm.
Because we're promoting VoiceGlow and Chat Dash all over the place now because we want them to grow because it's great. We don't have to build these things now. We can just like send our customers there. So I think kind of three categories is how I see it right now.
I love that, yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because that's the same sort of stuff that I've had to be batting away, and it's just when people say I get that some people may have struggled. It is quite a technical field at this stage, and I think something people need to keep in mind is that we're early to this still, and the stuff what we've got now in our hands with the Assistance API is such a leap forward in streamlining and simplifying the deliverability and creation of our solutions. Before we're having to use all these different tools and sort of like Frankensteining them together just to get a customized chatbot that had the capabilities to do a couple basic things. So I think
Totally.
we're making great strides towards user not only quality and performance for the client, but also ease of delivery. So that
Yep.
means less work on your end, but a better product, and that's the exact kind of progress that we want to be seeing. So I get that some people may not have had the technical ability or struggled to get things off the ground, and that's completely fine because that's what it's like to be early to something like this. And I've just been the whole time saying I'd rather be early than late to it. And so for all these guys who are out there and struggling and having a hard time, we've heard Braden say it, I've said it, Alex and Mozzie said it. There's is an opportunity here, and it really shocks me, and it makes me upset, and I'm getting a bit heated here because it's for you to say that there is no opportunity in selling AI solutions to businesses is one of the most ridiculous things that could probably come out of your mouth right now. I get
Totally.
if you said in the waste disposal business or something, but this is gonna be it is the highest growth industry likely in the next decade. And you were seriously telling me that there is no opportunity for you to be able to at least slot in somewhere and make money.
Total. The,
So yeah,
the
I'm it's great to hear you're on the same page there.
people are looking at the wrong dashboards. People are searching, like what I saw on Twitter was people sharing a Google Trends of AI automation agencies as a Google trend, and then they saw that it downticked, and it's like, no, no, no. You should be looking at AI on Google Trends. You should be looking at ChatGPT, like
Mhm,
because the business model is a derivative of the actual thing that's driving. Like, if every single business is now being promoted, you need to have an AI strategy, big and small.
mhm,
Then there will be a services layer for people to implement those solutions for them. Like it's just, I view it as like very simple. And if you can get
It's
into like,
not
oh,
rocket science, is it? It's like a simple equation.
totally. It's like, with Shopify, it's like businesses are going to have to sell things on the internet.
Mhm.
And then and the Shopify is kind of hard to use, right?
Yeah,
There's going to be a services layer, and there's a massive ecosystem of like apps that have popped up, of consultants, of implementers, of all these folks who are helping you set up your e-commerce website. And so yeah, it's funny, and I think people like to, you know, we see this all the time. It's like Voiceflow is the best. Voiceflow is dead. Voiceflow is, it's just been like this over time because people like headlines that are
yeah,
super binary, right? It catches your eye. If you just say things are all right, like no one's gonna watch that, right? But if it's like,
yeah.
this is the best, it's gonna get a completely different reaction. We get it, but I think for people, I've been doing Voiceflow now for 5 years. I think maybe our first year, maybe we made like 5 or 10 grand or something. It was like, entrepreneurship is a compounding thing. And
Mhm.
the reason that it's hard is because the gains are so big if it works.
Yeah,
And most people like, I don't know about you, but I've set up a Shopify store to try to sell things, back in college. And I quit after 2 months, right? And there's probably a million people like me, but the people who didn't quit,
yeah.
they're on a beach somewhere. So it's just something for folks to think about. If it's hard and it's uncomfortable, that's totally natural. It's part of the process. And it's like how the people are successful and of being successful because there's so few who actually make it through that process.
Mhm. Yeah, going back to that graph that you're mentioning, I think it's if you flip it on its head and you think about it, the only people who are searching for the keyword and were the people who are gonna be your competition. So if there's less search volume for AI automation agencies now, it means there's less people trying to start one, which means there's less competition and more opportunity for you. So if you really looked into what that graph meant, it would be like, okay, now all the people have dropped off. It's like people are getting flushed out of drop shipping, out of SMMA. They come and go. But the people that have stuck with like I used to dropship back in the day and I got flushed out as things got harder for me at a certain point. But the people who stuck on have continued to make money as people like myself dropped out of the market. And it's going
Totally.
to be the same thing over and over and over again. So
Best time to buy crypto was before everyone knew what Bitcoin was, right? Once everyone
yeah.
knows, it's kind of too late. Um, and at the end of, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with every cycle. It's just, it's a funny space. But the one thing I think, we can both say with confidence is it's an inevitability that there will be a services layer between businesses, who
Yeah.
want to automate things with AI, and the tools who want to provide. There's going to be a gap and someone has to fill that gap in the middle.
Knowledge gap. Yeah. Sure. It, makes me very excited for the future that we've got, such big strides coming and teams like yourself and Daniel and things like that. It's really great to have you guys in the space working and really putting in the work, and it's clear that you've got a very good handle on things and where things are going, so I think the entire community is gonna be very grateful for your thoughts here, Braden. I appreciate it a lot. Is there anything else you wanna get out there, future things to look out for with Voiceflow, things that we should keep an eye out?
Oh boy. I think it's important that people know where Voiceflow stands so that you can kind of predict their roadmap. So when people, ask,
Mhm.
what are we building next? It's like you can sort of infer. It's very obvious once you know what our stance is. Um, Voiceflow is going to focus on essentially three things. We're going to try to support the community as much as possible, and for us, what that means is not just like having a Discord and YouTube videos, all that kind of stuff. It's making our tool open so that we're not capturing all the value, that we're actually allowing other tool makers to capture value as well. So like
Mhm.
Chat Dash or Voice Glow, like these services that are now building on top of the ecosystem, like we want them to win. So that's really important. Um, Two, we're gonna make the platform as extensible and agnostic as possible. Like by choosing VoiceFlow, like you're not gonna have to worry about, is I don't know, like some other context window going to come out that's just going to blow the other models out of the way? Like we will always try to be model agnostic, so you can use whatever the best underlying technology is.
Mhm.
Uh, Three, we're just going to be the best agent creation experience. We're really focused on scalability. Like we're not going to try to be the most simple. We're going to try to be the most powerful. And so our
Mhm.
roadmap is all focused on like better modularity, better componentization, better integration support. Like, how do we just build the absolute best creation experience that still has a really nice UX? Like, VoiceFlow is very design focused, as you can probably
Mhm.
tell.
Yeah.
Uh, but like, how do we continue that design focus, but like really dial up the power so that people can create the world's best agents on VoiceFlow? And again, if you combine these three things together, like extensibility, community driven, and then having the best agent experience, I would hope in a couple of years we look almost like a Shopify for AI agents, right? Like
Mhm.
very large ecosystem, lots of templates, lots of partners, lots of different apps being built on top of us, and we're really supporting not just a community, but like sort of the whole ecosystem as like a core tool, but having lots of value rings around around us, not just trying to build like a end-to-end solution that becomes super corporate. So um, that's our roadmap, that's our focus, and you can kind of imagine the types of features we'd be building within that framework.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's important to mention as well. This is the stage we're at right now is human operated assistants and agents. It
Totally.
opens up the door next year for autonomous agents communicating with each other. So I think we'll leave it there and maybe touch base in a couple of months and hopefully have some cool new updates for you to share. And moving towards that future where we might not be using humans so much to interact with these chatbots and allowing the computers to do it for us.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. If you made it this far, you're a real one. So we appreciate you.
Yeah, I mean, I had a blast and I learned a lot. So I'm sure if even I'm learning a ton talking to you, I'm sure the community has had a great time here and got a lot of value out of it. So Braden, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Great. Thanks so much, Liam. See you guys.